In this lecture, we're going to talk about the one customization that you can do to characters, and that is change their colors. Now, there are restrictions. This only applies to the flat 2D characters. You can't change the colors of 3D characters. And as far as shapes and text and so on, we already know that there's ways to change that. So we're going to look at all of this. And what I've decided is, rather than just looking at changing colors, we're just going to go through the entire advanced menu tab. I'm going to show you how to create shadows and things like that too. So let's jump over to Create Studio and get started. Here we are in Create Studio, and I'm going to create a new project. Let's bring up its resolution, and we'll call it Character Color Change. And I'm going to change the background to white so it's easier to see things. There we go. So here we've got our new project, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to bring in a character. Let's actually bring in several things. Let's go to Studio, and we need characters, and we need these flat characters. So any of these characters here will work. The colorful, the supreme, or the elegant. The 3Ds won't work, and I'll show you what happens there. So let's go to Supreme, and we'll get Fitness Girl. And then I'm going to bring in some text, and I'm going to bring in a shape. Let's get a square. Let's make the shape red. Now, okay, this is the point that I wanted to make with shapes. To change the color of a shape, it's only one color. So you just come here to Settings, and you change the color, right? We can make it red. So color changing doesn't really apply to shapes. Let's go here to the shape and delete it. And then the same is true of text. If I go to the text, I can change the color of the text here. I don't need anything special to do that. So let's go ahead and we'll get rid of the text. So this only applies to 2D flat characters. Now, how does it work? First, you select the character, and we go over to Advanced. Now, the thing that we're going to play with right now is Replace Colors. So let's do that, and we can add a new replacement. So what you do is you have a color picker here. So I click on that, and I come over and I pick the color I want to replace. Like, let's say we want to change the color of her coat. So notice how this color picker changes colors too as I roll over colors. So let's go to the color of the coat, and we pick that as the color we want to change. Now notice how this is working. I'm not really changing the color of the coat. I'm changing the color purple in this entire character to another color. And let's change it to green. And it takes effect right away. I've changed it to green. Now let's look at the controls here. Tolerance is an interesting one. That's how tolerant is the program to color changes. So if I come down and I set the tolerance to 0, notice our change has gone away. Now if I set it to 1, then that means exactly that purple color will be replaced. Let's go 1, and the purple color gets replaced. Now notice the darker purple around the edge. If I bring the tolerance, let's delete that, and bring it up to 2, well, we're not there yet. How high do we have to go with tolerance? There we go. And finally at 5, the tolerance has been grown large enough that both the light purple and the dark purple get changed. So that's tolerance. The other thing that you can do is saturation. That's just how much color is in there. We can go all the way down to the bottom, in which no color is put in there, and it turns into a gray. And we can go up to the very top, at which point the color becomes very bright. And once again, we can take this and set it to 0, which is the default. Brightness is just the brightness of the color. So here we can make it very dark. In fact, it turns black. And we can make it very bright. It turns a very light green. So we can go and we can add a new replacement. Let's say we want to change the headband. Let's pick a color, and we'll change, oh, let's pick the shoe. Now, we've picked that pink color. Whoa! Whoops, I scrolled in the window instead of over here. And let's change that to blue. Notice it happens immediately, and it also happens on not just the shoes that we picked, but the headband, which is the same color. And once again, color tolerance. Notice the, we're up to a tolerance of 10. What happens if we bring this down to 1? Notice that it didn't get the center of the headband, and it didn't get the little tips of the shoes here. That's because the tolerance is not very high. It's only replacing this exact pink color. But if we up the tolerance to 2, okay, it still doesn't have it. 3, and there, finally it got the color in the headband, the middle color. And if we go up to maybe 5, no, we still don't have the tips of the shoes. Let's go up, and there went the tips of the shoes at 6. So that's the way that you use tolerance, and that's the way you change colors. You can stack up a whole bunch of color changes. So we can change the pants too. Let's pick the color picker, pick the pants, and maybe come over to yellow and give her yellow pants. And that's a little bright, hard to see. Let's bring down this, let's bring up the saturation on that. And let's bring down the brightness, say down into that area. So that's how you do this. And if you don't like the colors that you did, then all you've got to do is come here and remove your change. Watch the coat. We remove it, and the coat is back. We remove the headband and shoe colors, and that's back. Now, actually, before we do that, let me undo that removal. Did we get the, yeah, we got the headband back again. Let's pick this color. We'll go to advanced, and here's the headband. Now notice too, what happens if we really go high in the tolerance. Watch her skin and her face. So now the tolerance has finally been great enough that the brown of the face and the skin is within a large tolerance for the pink color. So you can get a lot of different things and pick a lot of colors in this way. So that's changing the color of a character. Now what happens if we go and pick a 3D character, like let's do the penguin. Here's the penguin, and we'll wink out Fitness Girl. And I come here and I go to pick the penguin, and I go to advanced and try color changes. It'll lead me through the whole thing, but watch what happens with the picker. Oh, it actually changed. It picked black. And then if I change that black, oh, it does work on 3D characters. See, it's not doing the wing though. It doesn't work quite right because there's variance in the colors, so your tolerance has to be very high. Oh, now I got the beak. So it just works really funky with 3D characters. It just doesn't work right. So don't try it. We're going to take this 3D character and we're going to delete it now. Now the other thing that I want to show you is all the other stuff under advanced. And in fact, we're going to need our, let's get our box back here again at least. And we'll change its color to blue. There we go, and we'll move it over here. Okay. Let's go to advanced, and we'll pick the girl, and look at the other things. Now, border doesn't seem to work for characters. I can't get a red border around the character. Let's pick back. I select red, and I say the width of the outline is going to be 20. No, see, it just doesn't work. So even though you have things in advanced, they don't necessarily apply to whatever character you're doing. What does work is shadow. Check this out. This is pretty cool. I say, okay, a black shadow is good. And I want to put a certain amount of blur on that shadow. See, it's blurring out behind her already. And then I move it out in the X and Y offset. I can go negative. So I can have the shadow go up and to the left if I want. And it gives you a shadow on the character. And that shadow moves around as the character does things. Here, let's have the character do something other than idle. Let's come here and we'll take the idle action. And we'll have dumbbells. Okay. Now, if we play the character, notice the shadow moves with the character. Very nice. So that's the shadow. The border we've already established doesn't work. Skew, let's see. Yeah, that's primarily for shapes, not characters. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see if we can skew the character. Oh, we can. That's neat. So we can skew them so that they have different shapes, and the skew sticks with it, I think. Yeah, look at that. That is very cool. I thought that skew, I've only used skew on shapes, so I didn't know that. And then color rotation. Okay, let's see. You can change all the colors. What color rotation does is it rotates through the color wheel. So this is the way to change the colors for an entire character rather than a color at a time. Let's go back to skew and unskew this. It's a little hard to look at when it's skewed. There we go. And then you just type zeros in there. You select the number and type 0. And here's the color rotation. Let's bring that down to 0 too, so we won't change our colors. And that's color rotation. We've seen replace colors, and then brightness and contrast just works on the entire character. So rather than just doing a single color like we would up here in color replace where we have brightness and saturation, we can do it for the entire character. Or contrast. Contrast is a little different. It's darkness and lightness. There, we're really coming in with that. And then filters. Filters are really cool. Now notice when filters comes up, it gives you this warning that it can really slow down the app to apply a filter. So the filters are great though. Look at this grayscale. Change the character to grayscale. Make it sepia. That's kind of old film style, a brownie. Just ups the brown. And vintage are your various types of filters that you can apply. But apparently there is a performance hit. Now, the shape, we can actually come here and we can work a border on it. Okay, it doesn't appear until you give the border a width. And now we've got border on the width. And we can do this with text, just not characters. So we've actually gone through all of advanced now for a character, not just color changing. But you can use all of these things to make a character more or less yours and not just the standard stock characters. And once again, if you try and do this with a 3D character, it's going to be kind of messed up because there's shades of color. This is a solid one color here. There's no shades of color in her pants or in her coat, so the flat characters are easier to change. I wouldn't try color change with a 3D character. You can do shadow and so on to a 3D character, and you can skew them and so on. So that's the advanced menu, not just color changes. And with that said, in the next lecture, we're going to look at working with multiple characters and elements. We're going to throw a bunch of characters and elements on the screen, and I'll show you how to control them all. I'll see you in that lecture.